Hey, hey, hey. Cindy Gould here from Create Your Victorious Life, and welcome back to the Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV apps on your respective app store, whether you're iOS or Android devices. While you download, make sure that you rate and leave an amazing rockstar stellar comment, please. We appreciate that. We love the fact that the app is totally free. Zingo TV can also be available and made available to you through Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, also on all your smart TVs from 2016 and going on, not the dumb ones. And today I'm like super excited to have my beautiful, amazing, brilliant, spirit-filled friend, Lori Dixon here. She is, let me just tell you, I mean, I'm glancing at her bio because it's like, which nuggets shall I share? Because there's so much. She founded LLD Legacy Ministries as well as LLD Legacy Publishing. I love the word legacy. I'm sure we'll get into that today. She brings more than 40 years of wisdom, discernment, experience working in education, therapy, business, nonprofits. She's absolutely a visionary leader, a prophetic thera coach. That's a cool term. And life transformation expert, best-selling author, and publisher, and multi-international award-winning host and producer on streaming TV as well. She has this dynamic little nugget with television appearances on The Real Housewives of Dallas. So she understands the reality of how that next chapter, that next episode in your series of life may be rewritten at any time. And you know what? You can also watch her all over a multitude of platforms, with her nationally on TV as a co-host, Fireside Chat, Real Biz Talk, media influencer for Zandra Evans and Zandra TV Network, and Light It Up TV, and Sawabona and I See You, it says, which she will explain that as well. What I love, I would say, one of the things I've just really treasure about her is her faith and her walk with the Lord, her marriage, being a mama, and the fact that she's able to find those heartstrings in life. She brings peace and I would say solidarity to situations, and she brings that peace, and she's a really great cohesive. I can see her as being extremely flexible within situations to find out where your heartstrings really are, not necessarily the strings and instruments you've been playing in your life. So without further ado, I want to welcome to our show Lori, Lori, Lori.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Love it.
Oh gosh, thank you for that introduction, girl.
Oh my goodness, you know, I love the fact that you sent me all the information that you did, because it just deepened my capacity and my ability to love you more. And so I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate your colors in your home. What? Another hello alignment. And one of the things that I did not mention, which we will absolutely be getting into today, is wow, wow, and wow. Now, those of you who know me know that I use that word a lot. Little did I know the impact Wisdom on the Walk series. And wow. And so we'll get to talk about that today as well. I'm just going to open it up the way I always do, though, and you just go wherever you feel led to go. How have you created? I gave a little tiny snippet, a drop of information about you. But how have you created so much victory in your life?
Oh, I will tell you, after hearing all of that, I don't know about you, but I am like utterly tired. You know? So-
My God, I was like, she's tired. That's so funny.
but I will say every day is a victory.
Mm.
And I used to laugh and say, just getting out of bed is a
Yeah.
victory for
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
there are many aspects that I have lived through in life that just overcoming or walking through them have
Right.
been a victory.
Right.
And if we don't claim those,
Yep.
then all the lessons and the tools and the connections and the alignments,
Yeah.
we lose them.
Yep.
And instead, it's valuing and giving worth to every single step in every day.
100%.
I will say this that, and I'll give you a real time example. I have some health challenges myself. And over the years, I have had to learn to go with the ebb and flow of that and not fight against what I thought I should be doing in life or what someone else thought I should be doing with my life, but
Mm.
actually hear what God is asking me to do.
Yes.
And for a while, I had to learn what be still meant, because that was not my life. There was no be still. My poor mom said I had to have five things going at the same time, or I didn't feel like life was full, you know?
Right.
But
Right.
now it's really being able to value those steps.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last couple of days, said to my husband, "Man, I'm losing my energy by 3:30. What
Mm.
is going on with me?"
Uh-huh.
And so I rested a little bit in the afternoon.
Good for you.
And today I've noticed that my energy has just been like the Energizer Bunny. And I was like, it's because I listened, learning to pace ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And as women, especially, Cindy, I mean, I know how many hats you wear. And sometimes we forget we shouldn't have one on at all.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
So I do believe that victory is when we listen and
Mm.
we follow through. And so, therefore, today, God knew I needed energy for today and going into this weekend.
Yeah.
So, He knew to tell me, shut it off at 4 o'clock, Lori,
Right.
rest for a bit.
Right.
That's the important lesson.
Right. You know what? I love that
Mm.
the listening piece. I have while you were talking, and I've said this twice this week on different shows and podcasts because it's the theme of the week. Whether your victory for today, and I'm going to tell you, I legit do happy dances in front of my washer because your victory for today could be getting it from the washer to the dryer without
Yes.
re-rinsing it to make it smell right. Right? Because you
Mhm.
forgot about it for a couple of days. And that could be the woo. And I do like the legit, okay, good job, Cindy. And right? Because it's a big deal. And those of you who don't think it is, you're lying. Or you
Mhm.
have stinky clothes.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
You just gave into it.
Right. 100%.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I'll share
Oh,
this cool story when you talk about listening. And this is, and are you familiar with John G. Lakes?
yes.
Okay, so check it out. So the
Okay.
other day, I had my own rest now moment. And I had been going, 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 going. It was probably around the same time, 4 or 5. I knew I had a big weekend coming up. My son was teaching, he's a professor of jujitsu, so he was teaching at an event.
Mm.
And I go to all his events, of course. And even though he's, in his mid 30s, I still, you know what I mean? And I rolled around with them and had fun. However, I knew I was going to need energy. And I wasn't really sure why God said rest, but it was like similar to what you're saying, almost like somebody just pulled the plug, and there was no more juice, like lay down now. So I
Mhm.
lay down, I wake up. This is what's so wild. I wake up and turn the TV on. Okay, which is not my norm like that. Turned it on. It was actually on like CBN or one of those, which I was surprised because I had not had it on that network before I went to sleep. And it was on a channel where there was actually a Kenneth Copeland show that was on, and they were talking about John G. Lakes. Now, I live near Spokane. John G. Lakes is from Spokane, and I know who it is. I used to serve at the Healing Rooms. I helped run the kids' prayer team. So I was like, whoa, what do I need to hear here? Now, check it out. This is where it gets so cool. So I'm like downloading what I needed in that moment, listening to John G. Lakes, grab one of his books. I'm like pouring through it, like, what do I need to know? And here's what's interesting. So yesterday, fast forward, I am I go and I get a massage. I need a massage, and I go get a massage. And normally I would turn out of the parking lot to the left to go to the light and go home. And I heard take a right. Okay, I know well enough. I know that voice. Take a
Mhm.
right, take another right. I'm driving in this town, never before, not Spokane, never before ever seen. Those little on sidewalks, those like tent wooden signs that say,
Oh,
business here, whatever. Literally a sign that says healing rooms with an arrow.
oh my goodness.
And I'm like, I'm like, wait, what? So then I go and I flip around because I know I'm supposed to. I go in there and I had them and I go in. They
Oh,
literally are only open during these 2 hours a week. They had just opened their doors, and
mm,
I was in there and had such a beautiful experience in there. And
oh,
it's like, but wow, right?
mm,
When you listen,
yes,
and sometimes it's those little nuances of because what would have happened if you're not listening? If I'm just tired, I'm laying down.
that's
I
right.
don't I don't need I don't have time to watch TV. I'm not do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then the experience I had yesterday was just
Mm,
unbelievable. And I know
mm,
a lifetime of those. So
oh,
please,
but don't you just soak in them?
100%.
Just
Mhm.
the essence of it is so sweet. And it's that constant reminder in our life that we are being led, we are on the right path,
Right.
we are getting confirmation. Over the last few years, I think people need so much validation
Mhm.
because we don't trust the process.
Mm.
And therefore, we don't, if we hear, just like you mentioned just now,
Mhm.
if we hear something, how many times do people say, I doubted that
Mhm.
that was really for me? I thought it was me making it up. We are walking into this plastic world, and I
Mhm.
don't mean that in a bad way. It's
Right.
just we aren't trusting what we know we're being led to do. And
Right.
it's what's getting us, as I say, off-roading.
Ooh, I love that.
It's off on that side road, thinking that you're headed in the right direction. Our speed is too fast. We're
Mhm.
not really paying attention and listening. And
Mhm.
suddenly, wham, we're in the mud or we're off a cliff. And we're like, how in the world did I get here?
Right.
Well, it's because you weren't listening when there was an arrow saying healing room this way. You were meant to turn.
100%. Like,
Hmm.
how crazy is that? They had literally just put the sign out. I mean,
Oh,
I got there, I think 2 minutes after they opened the door. They're only open those 2 hours. I had never been to that massage
mm,
parlor before either.
oh,
The whole thing was just like, and you'd have to be like, to me, blind as a bat, to miss those cues because it's I have this muscle exercised
yes.
because it's proven itself to us time and time again. So to the people that are listening now or in the future, because you and I both know they're supposed to be listening if they are, right?
Correct.
What can you share, or how did you really, like, if I were to go to the gym and you were my trainer and you would say, Cindy, this is how you build this muscle, what could you share with them as to how you've done that in your life?
Yeah. Part of it was growing up this way.
Mm.
And I, as my sister and I used to talk about, my earliest recollection is 2 years old. And
Mm.
it's because of a profound event that happened with my mom, and that she kept bringing me back to that evidence in my life. So
Mm.
I knew that I knew things and saw things and heard things since I was two. And now, do I remember them? No, my earliest is around 3 or 4. But what I will say is that it was so profound for her that I think it was embedded on purpose so that my mom could give me that knowledge.
That's so.
Those early things that are important for us to be aware that it was activated,
Mhm.
it was turned on for me.
Yep.
I remember as early as walking into our minister's office at around 5, and I would take notes in church. Now, all the other kids were off in children's church somewhere, and I'm in the front row going like this, at 5. And I would walk in and ask questions that a 5-year-old shouldn't have known. And so I was blessed to be in a home that I got that early foundation.
Mm.
And so, yes, I asked a lot of questions, but I also heard God on a routine basis. And so I wasn't in fear of it.
Right.
And I learned early, and even for children that I've worked with and families that I've worked with, it was about not having fear when we hear that quiet voice of
Mhm.
God in our life, and
Mhm.
trusting your children, but also your knowledge that that's how God brings us into what I call your grace gifts,
Oh.
which are those deeper gifts that are given to us from birth, that are activated in our life when they're needed. Now, I will say my mom was terribly afraid of my gifts. And
Yeah.
so many times I say what not to do because of what my mom did, like, shh, be quiet, don't say those weird things, you know. But it's about learning to trust that voice inside, and
Mhm.
then being able to understand what God tells us in our life to follow. And it's why I became that prophetic therapeutic coach.
Mhm.
I went to school for all the big titles and, the almost completed full PhD and all that other stuff, all to say that, yes, you knew what you knew. And now you know what you know. you know and
Right.
so, yeah, I don't have the diplomas posted. There are a few of them around in here, but it was more to be able to say, you can trust me because theoretically I also am aware of those things.
Yep.
And so I was able to activate and bring that forth, and even do healing with children and families early on under licenses and certifications so that they weren't afraid of what the outcome was.
Right.
So sometimes we have to do those things, and we have to walk just as much in this life just like you doing work in neurocoding.
Mhm.
You know, we
Mhm.
know what we know, but then we go back and we show the evidence in the brain
Yep.
that we already knew was there.
Yep.
It's so
100%.
similar, girl.
It is, and what it's interesting, I was on another Zoom class from the Neuroencoding Institute this morning, and there was a gal that is also in the John Maxwell world,
Mm,
and she was talking about Bible study and different things, and she was talking about how, with her different clients, how she's working with them, and she wants to bring even the and does, and she also has her degree in psychology, and she was a therapist for years and then flipped like you did, to give her a broader brush to paint with, you know and with less, with more freedom, I believe, to be able to serve it at a bigger level. And what's interesting is that as I was listening to different parts of the conversation, at the end of the day, a lot of people want to bring their faith-based tools, knowledge, everything into their practices or their businesses, and don't know how. And for me, and I know for you, very similar. It first of all, it is who we are. So, I mean, and we know whose daughter we are, and we know, the things. So it'd be like me not coming in as Cindy Gould. I mean, and not being, my parents' daughter. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? But what I really caught from it, and what I know to be true in my own business, is that God created, our Heavenly Father created each of us in His image. And when we are told, to renew our minds, like it says in Romans, or, there is, because God created science as well. So there's a very scientific way to reprogram, right?
mhm.
Basically your brain. I mean, there is a way to redo that to where you actually, and it's actually really cool. And so for people that don't really understand, the neurons that fire together wire together. So you are activated at such a young age for your, I love the grace gifts, love that, for that. And yet you don't physically remember certain things, but your body and your unconscious mind never forget those.
Yes.
And so whether you can recall that to your physical memory and spew it out, or whether the grace gift comes through you and moves through you to others, whatever that is in that moment, that you may not, it's kind of like when that woman passed by and just touched the hem of his garment. Sometimes you
Yes.
may walk by
Mm,
somebody and not even
mm.
know that that's happening, but your body and your unconscious mind and the Holy Spirit know that that's
Yes.
going on, right? Which is so
Yes.
great. And it
Oh,
boils down to
oh,
what you said, trust.
yes. And knowing that every one of those small aspects,
Mhm.
nothing is small for the Lord. Every single, I laugh. I brought my comb in here earlier and I was like quickly combing through, the cat probably came and redid the top. She does that frequently. But I was thinking of, oh my goodness, every hair on my head
Mhm.
is blessed by God and it
Woo!
was created. And so that one hair, which is now mostly gray, but it was created
Mhm.
so far back, way before I even came here. He
Right,
already knew what that hair would be.
right.
And I want to tie something together that you just said. You know, and I don't know if you and I spoke about this before, but I am adopted. And back then, I was adopted at such a very, very young age
Mm.
that I wasn't where I would have had cognizant
Mm.
memories, real time memories
Right.
of that adoption process because I was 10 days old.
Mhm.
I was an infant,
That's awesome.
okay?
Mhm.
But all our cellular
Yep.
memories,
Yep.
our wiring, already was wiring
100.
under that idea that I came from that mother's womb, and due to health concerns was in a nurse's foster home for those first 10 days. And
Mm.
and then passed to my mother, who was wonderful in my life. But it's that aspect that our body remembers. Now,
Right.
what we see it as human beings is having to work through some of those early traumas
Mhm.
that we know were the early wiring,
100%.
whether we want to acknowledge them or not.
Oh, that's so
You
valuable.
know? And
Yeah.
it's why when I started working therapeutically with children, I started at middle schoolers, who we all know are like their wiring and hormones, they already have emotionality, that is off the charts. But
Yeah.
I went all the way down to infants and toddlers, and I
Mm.
started truly and therapeutically working with them because we already knew that we could create such systemic change. And
Right.
it's why God created us that way. He
Mhm.
didn't want us to go through those early life traumas. He
Right.
needed people like myself and others that will go and help change that coding that
Yep.
occurred.
Yep. Yep.
You
100%. Well,
know?
you know what you and to just build on what you were sharing, you spent over 9 months being wired and created in your mother's belly, in the womb. You had not just her DNA, but everything about her. You heard every conversation. You heard
Mhm.
everything that happened there. You felt every pain, every trauma, every sorrow, every joy, every laugh, all of it. And all of that was programmed and woven into the fabric of who you were born as. And
Mhm.
what's so interesting when you think about that, like my mother was adopted as well, only she
Ah,
knew, yeah, and she knew, though she was with her mother and my great grandmother for a while before she was adopted out, and so she knew all of that also hardwired things in as you go, and she, I always say I hit the parent lotto, and because I just adore my parents, and it isn't that they did everything perfectly, like who does? None of us were born, but in spite of and because of their lives and the things that came up in their lives, they showed up present, very present in ours, and
mm,
and just every day did their best to be the very best them that they could be as they were growing and learning, as we know, as being mamas, and
mhm.
how much, like what I know now, holy smack, I wish I knew that when I was having my babies, right? Like,
Exactly.
different would the world be,
Oh,
right?
oh. And I have to insert right there. It's why when you become a grandparent,
Mm.
we go a little crazy and a little over loving and over everything because we can finally be able to, we know the importance of pouring into those children, and
Right.
we have the ability, usually many grandparents do, we are blessed
Yep.
to be able to be present.
Yep.
So I laugh and say to any of your listeners, please let the grandparents just love all over your
Oh,
children
yeah.
because it's so important these days.
Yeah.
You know.
So important. And I have such a
Mm.
precious relationship. I have 9 grandbabies. And so,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
and it's so great. And they range, from 22 on down. And I
oh.
have such a precious, almost 22. She'll be 22 soon. And but they call me with their wins. They call me with their sadnesses. They call me with, check out this outfit, Grams, or they don't say outfit. She says, check out the fit I wore to church today, and like, okay.
I love it.
Or some of them, like one of my granddaughters that went to homecoming the other day, she had these beautiful shoes, and she said, "Dang, I should have just come and raided your closet." I'm like, "Yeah, next time." You say, I'm like,
Oh,
and it's so great. And again, though, back to the original point that you made about resting, I
mm,
would also add to that the pause. Like, rest in
yes.
those moments. There's power in your pause. Don't be
Hmm.
so busy and distracted, creating your life that you don't live it.
Yeah.
Enjoy those moments because those moments are the moments that I remember, right? That I'm sure you remember that as children, even I remember some powerful moments with my great grandmother that I get to treasure forever, and
Mm,
those kinds of things. Or even the other pieces, like you said, have the conversations and ask things. Like, I ask things like, how did you know that?
mhm,
And then I get to hear, well, actually, and I get to hear about how they took a left and they took a right because they were being divinely guided. And those, and then it's like, wow. And 9 times out of 10, and Lori, this is probably your life as well, whatever that story is, it rises up in you when you're confronted with a situation, right?
mhm.
And it's like, ah, that's why I got to hear about that, right?
And that's the muscle that you
Mhm,
ask about,
mhm.
because it's when you actually took the time and you made it something within your brain, within your heart, and
Mhm.
within your spirit that was so wow, as we say, that
Yes.
you could not let go of that. So when then you go through something and it pings that beautiful memory
Yep.
to help you through that time, they
Yep.
are all meant to be here as guides for us
Mhm.
in those memories.
Right.
And it's when we decide to prune them away and put something else in there that we think that matters more, that
Right.
it becomes more challenging,
Right.
you know?
Mhm. It's
Go ahead.
go ahead, honey.
No, I was just going to say that I think it is so important, and you brought the story up, and you do know that I am a publisher, but not in a way that anybody else thinks. 2 years ago, I've always been an author I've always published and worked in program publishing and copywriting and all that. But God said, my people's stories are what they need to remember.
Right.
And so that's how actually the wow started. I had no idea I was doing that. Actually, I told him, "What?" Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, what? Let me
Say
talk."
what? What?
I know.
What? Write that down again. I'm not getting that,
Yeah.
But it is in the stories.
Yep.
I'm working with an illustrator and author right now. Her book will
Mhm.
be out by the end of the year. Amazing story, wonderful children's book. I'm just enamored of what we've created. And in that, because I want our children to have good literature,
Yes.
but in that, it is all about that treasuring every step of the journey so that our children have and our grandchildren have the
Yes.
stories that we want them to keep retelling. And
Mm.
I've read my entire life, and we read to our grandchildren from the second they were born. We were already telling stories,
Yep.
and they know that. But with that, we have to tell the stories.
Yep.
Can I tell one really fast?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
So much so that the people in our lives, like your great grandmother, who isn't present physically in this world anymore, her
Mhm.
legacy continues in our life because we treasure those moments. And so telling her story impacts all those generations to follow. And
Yep.
so, in our last Wow book, I write several chapters within the Wow books. And then I interweave them with other women's stories that
Mhm.
need to be heard and told and elevated
Huh.
and treasured. And so, in one of them, I talked about how joy needs to be a part of our life every day.
Yep.
It is part of how we live a victorious life, is
100%.
really capturing the essence of what joy is. I had a client years ago who didn't know what joy was in her life.
Mm.
She and I worked together therapeutically for several years on identifying what joy was and how to capture those moments and solidify them. And one of my stories was my mom and I had gone after my father had passed. We used to take these little trips together. My ex-husband at the time, notice I, like
Yeah.
did,
Got
sorry, it's just habit.
didn't know
Um, he
that.
served a purpose, you know. But we would go on these little excursions, and we love Georgia, and we love going and when the peaches and the Vidalia onions are like ready to go, we would drive up and we would stop at the same places all the time.
Mm.
And mom and I had gone up, and we had gotten this giant thing of peaches. And I had said to her, "We're going back to the hotel. Are you sure this is going to be enough to have one, but also to drive home with?" And we were in the hotel that night, long story short. Um, and my mom freaks me out. She had a wicked sense of humor. And she wakes me up in our hotel room and she is saying, "Lori, did you hear that?" Well, I'm thinking somebody's at the door or in our room or
Right.
something's wrong. And she said, "Oh my gosh, did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And I'm like, staggering awake. And she said, "Did you hear that? I think the peaches are calling me." And I am like, "It is 3 a.m. and you just get up and have one of the stupid peaches, mom." And so, of course, the lights go on and we sit up, you know,
Yeah. Tasty.
dripping with the juice, all the way down our arms, laughing hysterically.
That's
The
great.
maids probably wondered what was all over those sheets when they left.
Yeah.
But I will say that I can have the sensory details of that because it evoked a wow moment for me.
Yep. Yep. I love it.
So those are the things that create legacy, my dear, as you know.
You want to know something really funny? So before there was a little glitch in the broadcast, and I spoke, and then you spoke at the same time, and so you remember, I was literally going
Yes.
to talk about and transition into exactly what you're talking about, the publishing, et cetera, which is so great. And then when I said something about my great grandmother, I named my oldest daughter after her. And
Oh,
my oldest daughter has what she passed. I knew when I was pregnant, and back then we didn't
mm,
have tests that told us sex or anything, right? But I had flown from Hawaii to California when I was just a few months. I wasn't even to the completion of my first trimester. and I said, "Hey, Grandma, I flew there to tell her I was pregnant." And I said, and I was going to have the oldest, I think, great grandchild, or great, right? Yeah, she'd be great. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to name her after you. How do you know she's a girl?" "I just know she keeps showing up." I know, right? So she passes a month before I give birth. And
Oh,
when my daughter is born, on her thigh, she has a birthmark that's my grandmother had a very dominant nose and chin, and it's the outline of her face. Now,
oh my
yeah,
goodness.
and you said,
Oh,
anyway, if you go back and rewatch this, you'll see you said when you mentioned my great grandmother legacy, but you said leg a little bit longer. I mean, it's like I see those little things as like
oh,
I know, right? I mean, but it's even
mm,
to the point of our whole conversation. When you lean in that much, you hear even the little nuances, the little nods, the little flickers of light that say you're on the right trail. You're
yeah,
on the right track. This is the direction I want you to go in, which
yeah.
is so beautiful because I think about that and I think about just the things that she brought into my life. And as you said,
Mhm.
stories that we're told, or they even the peaches, you'll never forget that. We're talking about it now, and this happened zillions of years ago, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just so fun. And I think about what you said when it comes to stories. Our children, like when we were kiddos, I loved going to the library. I loved taking my children to the library, right? I loved going to the library. Or remember when you would get that scholastics order form,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
I need this many books, so I get this free poster, so I get right. And it was all about, I know it brought joy instantly. And it's all about reading and
Yeah.
stories and learning from that. One of the brilliant things my parents did as we were children, before we'd go to bed, we'd plop in whoever's room it was, and we'd all be laying there. And I remember from cover to cover being read Pinocchio, being
Oh,
read, The Wizard of Oz, being read all these books cover to cover with animated voices, with different, my
mhm.
parents acted the thing out. They took turns doing it with us. And those were treasured things. So consequently, I did that with my children, of course, and even with my grands and read. But it is almost a lost art now with the internet.
Yes.
We have YouTube shorts. People don't even watch the full YouTube anymore. They watch the 15
Mhm.
second or the 1 minute short. Everything is shrunk down. I
Mm,
personally see that as huge distractions, obviously, and almost perversions, darts of the
yes.
enemy. Let me cut this out of their lives so they don't have that testimony to build off of. They
Yeah.
don't have that story of valor to recall when they're in a tough spot, right? What do you
Mhm.
think of that?
No, 100% girl. I also think that it creates the chatter. It's the chatter with the underlying message that overwhelms our brain.
Oh,
I also agree with you. I do think that many times it is the enemy that is creating some of the chatter,
mm,
and that we have to create choices.
100%.
And one of the things, I was talking to a client this morning, and we were he was really asking me to kind of look forward a little bit and what God was showing about the things that are coming.
Hmm.
And one of the major phrases that I told him is that God keeps saying, stay on track
Yeah.
and do not look at the chatter or the distractions that are going to be there. If you look there, there may be fear. There may be something that is not good for you. I need you to stay on the path because of where we are. And he and I talked through that in a great way in his own life.
Mm,
And number one, that's part of what I love, being able to share my gift with others. But it also is a way that God can use me
yeah.
for my purpose being here, as well as to allow that individual to go forward in the stories
Mhm.
that are then going to be created in his life.
Right.
That's my job,
Right.
you know, and I take it very seriously. And the more, and I know you are like so much on that path,
Mhm.
that the more that when we see something, it's not like when we were younger in our 20s or whatever, and it was like distraction,
Right.
distraction. What am I supposed to pay attention to? We
Mhm.
had to have those guides in our life,
Mhm.
just as you're saying, that
Mhm.
helped us to stay on the path.
Right.
So the stories are purposeful.
Yeah.
The stories we're creating and the stories that will come after those will be purposeful.
Yep.
The ones that we may binge watch on Netflix may not always be, but they are great for, allowing your mind to numb out when you need that. But realize that's what many times they are there for, you
100%.
know?
Yeah. You know what's interesting about what you say? Like I see our enemy as our opponent in this game
Mm,
of life, and our job is
mm,
to master the game board. And he's just your opponent. Now, this is what's interesting to me. There was a time in everybody's lives where he might have whispered that self doubt, that
mhm.
criticism. What happens when you don't renew your mind is he doesn't have to keep speaking that into your life anymore, because once it's hardwired, because our brain's electric, our heart's magnetic. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. There's a brain in
Yep.
your heart. You pump it out, you magnetize those situations to you. Like, if you get out of bed and you're grumpy and mad already, 9 times out of 10, you're going to stub your toe. You're going to lose your keys. You're going to all that, because you're already wiring your morning for that, right? It's
Yes.
the same thing. He doesn't have to continue to whisper that stuff, because you're already hardwired. He can just move on to the
Mhm.
next one, because then that enemy becomes your thought life. Then that
Correct.
enemy becomes your heart life. And until you renew and fix and continue, like you said, to stay vigilant, on track, on the course. And
Mhm.
you know when you're not on track, because things
Yes.
feel uneasy, and as my grandgirls would say, they're a little crunchy. Things feel,
Yeah.
it's kind of like when you're on a freeway and you maybe are just, changing channels or something, and you go off that highway a little bit and you hear that da 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 da, that thing. It's happening in your
Yes.
life. You
Ooh.
when, oh shoot, I need to be back on track here, and when everything hums, right?
Oh, I love that. What a great analogy. Oh, I love that.
You got my vote.
Oh,
So we have
yes.
just a couple minutes. Thank you, thank you. I want to thank you so much for being here today.
You're
Where can
welcome.
everybody find you? Where can they find your books? Just all the things in the Lori Verse.
I would tell them first to go to walkwithlori.com. You are going to find all sorts of our books, our who we work with. It's in the middle of new updates. You'll find some show links, but follow me on social media. Instagram is Walk with Lori, super simple. But you can also follow me on my personal page, which is Lori Lane Dixon. That was my maiden name, and it's a nod legacy wise
Yeah.
to my parents. So, but you can follow me, and I also have lots of neat things that we're doing, and you'll find it all out there. And if you're ever in need, DM or PM me.
Yay. I love that. Again, I thank you so much. This has been
You're
fun. I am
welcome.
already wanting, please come back. It'd be fun. Maybe something at the
Love
first of the
that.
year to help me launch, some wonderful wisdom into people to get their year going. I want to thank all of you. You can find me on my socials, The Victory Network or Cindy Gould. Just follow me there and you'll find all the things. Thank you all for being here today. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish radio networks. Please check it out, spanglishworld.ca, for all your news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. I love you, Lori. I'm so grateful that you were here. Thank you so
Love
much.
you too, honey. Bye bye.
Bye.